Our Minister of Finance says.
Honourable Nicola Willis.
Mr Speaker, members across this House agree that the people of Dunedin and its surrounding regions deserve and need a modern, fit-for-purpose set of hospital facilities. Now, that commitment to the people of Dunedin was first made in 2017. And when that commitment was made, Mr Speaker, the people of Dunedin had a right to expect that by now, that hospital would have been delivered. In fact, in 2018, December of 2018, the government of the time announced that the hospital would be built in 2 stages, with the outpatient and day surgery building fast-tracked, and the larger inpatient building due to be finished either 5 or 6 years after that. But as we stand here today, Mr Speaker, in Dunedin, on the ill-chosen site for the Dunedin Hospital, there is steel in the ground, but not enough progress. And we, as an incoming government, have been faced with a significant set of challenges. Because the reality of opposition, Mr Speaker, is that you observe projects from the outside and you remain hopeful that the government of the day has things under control. But what we found on assuming office, Mr Speaker, was that the Dunedin Hospital project was anything but in control. In fact, one of the first major capital budget decisions we had to make for the health sector was to put aside an additional $300 million for the Dunedin Hospital. So I would ask members opposite to desist from the false claim that we have reduced funding for this project. In fact, one of our most significant decisions was to immediately increase funding for this project in recognition of the fact that the costs had blown out so significantly that it would be impossible to deliver it without that extra funding. What we found, Mr Speaker, was a project that has in fact been plagued with problems since, I think, the most ill-fated decision which was made in 2018, and that was in May, when the government of the day announced that the new hospital would be built on the old Cadbury chocolate factory site and parts of the surrounding blocks. Now, I know that that decision at the time seemed magical, because for the people of Dunedin, the sadness of seeing that site unoccupied would be met with a new hospital. But actually not much work was done to assess whether that was a good site for the new hospital. And what was found, and I reference here, Mr Speaker, the advice we have received from experts, was that the extraordinary cost premiums associated with the land purchase, together with the demolition costs, contaminated ground, piling difficulty, flood level risk, and, Mr Speaker, an extremely constrained construction site flanked on 3 sides by state highways made it an extremely unattractive project for contractors and suppliers, which further drove up construction costs. And, Mr Speaker, these numbers I find compelling, so I wish to share them with the House. Since the 2017 business case, the cost per square metre to build the hospital has tripled from $10,000 per square metre to $30,000 per square metre. So, Mr Speaker, it is not our job in government or my job today to lament where those poor decisions have led us. It is our job to get on and deliver a hospital for the people of Dunedin. And we have set about doing that in the most responsible manner in which we can. And so today, you have seen the Minister of Health and the Minister for Infrastructure go to Dunedin to be upfront with the people there about the choices that we face. And we have released the Rust report, which has objectively analysed whether or not the Dunedin Hospital project can be delivered within budget. And what that report makes clear is that even with the additional $300 million that this government is committed to adding to the existing appropriation for this project, even with that, the project is highly unlikely to be delivered in budget. And so we do have a choice at that juncture, Mr Speaker. The choice that we have is that we can, on the one hand, carry on lifelessly ignorant to that fact, or, Mr Speaker, we can take steps to get it back on track. We have chosen the latter course, and what we have presented are 2 options that we are considering in good faith, and that we wish to know from the people of Dunedin that they know we are considering these 2 options. The first option is to revise the project specification and scope and within the existing structural envelope, and the second option is a staged development on the old hospital site, including a new clinical services building and refurbishing the existing ward tower. Now, Mr Speaker, I have absolute clarity from members opposite that they think that there is no amount of money that would be too much for Dunedin Hospital. And I put to you, Mr Speaker, that that just can't be the case. Because actually, when we make choices about the way we spend New Zealanders' money, there are always opportunity, costs and trade-offs. And the advice that we have received tells us that this project is on course to blow out millions and millions of dollars more. Now, those are millions of dollars that we wish to invest in health infrastructure. Mark my words, Mr Speaker, we will be investing more every year in health infrastructure across this country, because despite their rhetoric, the last government wasn't very good at getting new hospital buildings built. It wasn't very good at actually redeveloping facilities or using money for good effect in the health system. So, what we are going to do is have to do work across our hospital system, in Whangarei, in Nelson, in Tauranga, in Invercargill, where there are suboptimal facilities, where upgrades are required. And so the choice that we have to confront is whether it is in that context appropriate to let this project continue down its sad, sad path of cost blowout after cost blowout after cost blowout. And the choice that we have made is to be pragmatic and upfront with New Zealanders that it's time actually for us to take some sensible steps to control those costs. And I'm going to be very interested, Mr Speaker, to see whether Aisha Vera will stand up and tell us that she is proud of the decision-making that occurred over the past 6 years in relation to this project. Because what we have found is a pattern of actually completely inadequate planning occurring and a reluctance to confront emerging problems. What we have seen is that the last government knew this project was going wildly off course and chose not to take steps to bring it back on track. It actively chose not to do that, and instead, I believe, ultimately was pulling the wool over the eyes of both the people of Dunedin, but actually us as an opposition, because we were not in a position to know how badly things were actually going in this project until we assumed office and were given the ability to look at all of the information about it. Mr. Speaker, one of the facts that has surprised me about it, which I can barely believe, is that the actual business case for the project was still being developed while the project was being built, which I'd love to hear members of office explain to me how that is good practice. That despite the years that had been spent on the project, there was still no clear plan for the pathology lab, no plan for the refurbishment of the existing facilities, no plan for the car parking, and all of that was estimated to cost hundreds of millions more, but hadn't been included in the overall plans. And what we see is a haphazardness. And I'll tell you something that happens when you do that, Mr. Speaker, which is that those who are building the project and are involved in the project see you coming. They see you coming and they say, this is a government that can't even put together a business case. It can't even be clear about the timelines for this project or what its budget parameters are. So it gives them complete ability to continue down a path of excessive costs. And it's time, actually, that we were realistic, that we were clear that every project, no matter how important, still must face some budget constraints. And I want to finish these remarks, Mr. Speaker, by saying this. Delivering people really good health facilities so that our nurses and doctors and health workers can operate in modern facilities that allow them to effectively and efficiently deliver services is an important challenge for New Zealand. Dunedin deserves good facilities, other parts of the country too. We will invest more money in this, but we'll also deliver plans and budgets that work.
Scott Willis.
I find it a little bit strange that any politician would go after the location and the chosen site for the Dunedin Hospital, because when that idea of building the new Dunedin Hospital was floated, there were two other sites that were in mind that were suggested. Both of them were outside of the CBD, but the original discussion actually talked about how building a hospital of the size that was required in the centre of Dunedin was going to be next to impossible, given as Dunedin is a largely industrialised city with very limited space on where something like this could be built. So when the Cadbury factory came up, it was, Nicola Willis described it as a miracle, I believe, but it was lucky and fortunate that this was happening. But the problems that she is highlighting, they existed beforehand and they were well known about. We know the land was reclaimed. We know the area had been industrial. We know there were services that had to be fixed. And during the scope and the planning of this project, yes, they had to be taken into account, but that was accounted for in the costing. So I'm confused that it's being brought up again now.
Yeah, I mean, like the other one is like saying it's next to 3 state highways.
That is correct. You've got state highway divided in 2, and then running right through the centre of the inpatient and outpatient building is State Highway 88 that connects the port to Dunedin. So it is a very difficult place and challenging place to have been building on. There was discussion about moving State Highway 1 to make it more available for the contractors, but unfortunately the general public didn't think that was a good idea, and given the way that our traffic has increased in Dunedin, frankly, I think it wouldn't have been a good idea.
Because I mean, the other one is being next to a state highway, particularly State Highway 1, has some sense to that. You know, considering, like, as you know from Wellington, like, it's a little bit better now since we have the cycle lane and the bus lane down Adelaide Road, but effectively trying to get from the Terrace Tunnel to Wellington Hospital, what can be like in peak could be an absolute, like, guess which way to drive. And we're, you know, so, and a lot of, like, you know, if they're coming from Waititi or they're coming from Mosgiel, they're going to be coming down a state highway in an ambulance. They're not going to, you know, unless they come by ear, you know, they're not likely to be coming down a back gravel country road.
Additionally, with that location not only being on the state highway to make it really accessible and good for people to access, being in the centre of town, it's next to the city bus hub, it's also right next to the university. And being as it's a core part of the med school and that training facility, having a site right next to the university was hugely prioritised, because the second option that they had available of the 3, the one that we were leaning most towards, was actually just outside of Dunedin, closer to Mosgiel, where the population is growing faster, but it was further away from a university, which meant it wouldn't be as accessible as a training facility for the students who were working there or the university staff who also work in the hospital.
When you're talking about there, I'm just on Google Maps at the moment, would that be like Fairfield, Abbotsford area?
Burnside. Just before Abbotsford, as you're coming down the Southern Highway, as you come over Lookout Point, there's a big open field. On the right-hand side, there's an old factory, used to be Kemp Thorne Prosser. It's actually a film studio at the moment, but that was something that had been talked about as using for a site as a hospital.
So just for those who are wondering, so here is the map of, so Burnside is what's it called? It's roughly where my mouse is, but that doesn't mean I gather the mouse is not actually transferring onto the screen. Effectively, so that's where Burnside is, which is next to the Dunedin Southern Motorway, and where the current site where they're building is in the guts of this. This section here. Which, if we go through here, there's the Octagon, there's the railway station over here, and here's the current hospital, which is virtually, as you could say, virtually across the road from where it is.
That was also something that was prioritised as well, because when they looked at the construction, they talked about administration, and this is also right next door to the current administration block that's been used by the Southern DHB, which means that's one less building to have to build.
Yeah, and also here's Otago University, just to put things into comparison for those who are watching from home on that one of just putting in there, I'm doing my best to navigate Dunedin.
Yeah, I mean, what I heard a lot of was Nicola Willis just saying, ignore us, blame Labour, blame Labour, blame Labour, blame Labour. You know, the fact that they could do this to Dunedin Hospital, it really highlights the fact that they could pretty much do it to any other hospital. There's other hospitals that need upgrading, right?
Heart Hospital.
Yeah.
Was it Palmerston North?
Yeah.
Nelson.
Yep. There's other hospitals that need upgrading. And Nicola's just like, hey, forget the fact that, I didn't account for this. And did a whole bunch of tax cuts and cancelled the ferries and did a whole bunch of other stuff that's going to end up costing us more money. Blame Labour.
Yeah, Laura, you're correct. It was a lot of blaming Labour.
Yeah.
But what I'm really confused by is that the majority of the changes, the things that she's talking about, the pathology lab, the car parking building, those are all changes that National wanted to introduce into this hospital.
Oh,
those
really?
were National's idea.
So they're blaming themselves?
They weren't included in the original scope because the previous government didn't want to include them based on the fact that those things were either readily available or for whatever other reason. So when National came into power, one of the first things they said was staff car parking. And now it's the staff car parking that they're saying is the reason that this is costing too much.
I can't help but laugh. This is, my God.
The whole thing.
I've got a cat that's just joined me.
Now Wellington Hospital, 80% of the staff work between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. during the day. And actually, if we actually go into it, it's more like 8 to 6. It's virtually the same, and the public transport during the day starts at like 5, 6 a.m. in the morning and goes
public transport ends at 9 p.m. on weekdays.
Ends at 9 p.m.
Yeah, so yes, the staff car park was needed, and you just showed us on the map the location of where the hospital was going to be, right between the Octagon, where the nightclubs are, and the university campus, where the young people going to the nightclubs live. So actually, to keep the staff safe, yes, there should have been a staff car park in there from the very beginning. However, because it was introduced later on in the stage, it's not been costed, it's not been planned. And that's $485 million, according to the report.
Oh, God.
Sorry, my cat turned off my camera. Piggy! He's like, pay attention to me.
But if we can go back to Laura's point, I think, of Nicola Willis telling us that this is too much money, when Nicola Willis just, what did they work out? $2.85 billion tax cuts to those who own rental properties.
It's like, hey, listen here. You can have your money back. I want Dunedin to have a hospital.
Yes.
It's like, I don't want the tax cut.
$14.8 billion of tax cut changes over the next 5 years, which per year is roughly $3 billion. So she's asking where this money can come from.
We've got some breaking news from our remote editor. It's Labour's fault Laura's camera got turned off, not the cat's.
True. I'm going to blame Labour on that one.
I thought that would be quite a good one to sit there and put out there. Yeah. Shall we see what Nicola Willis's namesake, has to say?